Now, what we do in education is very important. The fundamentals, the constancies help us direct us to see what the philosophy of education is something. What is the outlook they have? What is a human? That matters in figuring out what education should address. And then it affects how people turn out after an education. And that's important. We should, in a proper education, grasp the principle of education, philosophy of education, that humans are self-sovereign social animals. We are rational animals. We are biological animals living in an inanimate world. That helps us direct us into producing good human beings, into taking care and loving the children and students that are in our care, that we should care for, that we should be responsible for. It should be of profound importance as to how they're going to turn out and what they're going to be. We should want them to be the best they can be. We should get all our wisdom and give it to them and help them be better than we were, make a better world, not just be lesser, at least be the same. But the same or better. But there's not enough of that, not enough good, proper philosophy in education, as you can see, because a lot of people do not know enough about the world we live in. They're not connected to it. There's a lot of connection to memorization, connection to social stuff, but very little connection to biology, ecology, the inanimate world we live in. We are biological animals living in an inanimate world. What do we need for that? Physics and biology must be part of education, natural history. Memorizing DNA, useless. That does not connect most anybody to the world. Maybe people who are older and advanced and have that stuff and have this stuff fit in, but what connects someone to the world? A dog, a cat, a squirrel, a local creek, a beautiful forest. There is connection. That is very much missing, as we know, from modern society, modern life, modern education. Some people even have names for it. They write books about it. Nature deficit disorder and things like that. We have a modern aberration. Stuff we're doing has never been done in human history before. Thinking we're different from or separate from nature and trying to maybe some people thought that before, but they couldn't really act on it or do much about it. But nowadays some people can pretend a little bit, but be a little more ignorant of it, but they're still there. We get food from farms, whether we like it or not. It doesn't come from grocery stores. It comes ultimately from a farm, so on and so forth. We can't do whatever we want with nature. We are in nature. Nature is not in us. Each individual in human society bows down to nature and reality. Nature does not get by with our allowance and it doesn't need our permission. It's going to go on. We are not. But in a lot of stuff, you see too much memorization. Do people really understand? Are they being really... So we got to look, instead of, oh yeah, of course I'm a self-sovereign social animal. Of course my education's great. I'm being done that way. Wrong. We need to look at the facts. We need, as Abraham Lincoln would say, in debates and so on, in speeches, we need to follow the standards of proof as laid down by Euclid. And even more, the standards developed by Newton and Galileo, standards of induction, concept formation, things Aristotle did, stuff people have learned way beyond what Euclid did, and we need to correct some of the mistakes he made. At the time, he thought ideas came from ideas, which is ludicrous, but they didn't know better at the time. Now, as Galileo knew, all human reasoning must be placed second to direct experience. Experience comes first. Everything else has to obey that. Newton likewise. And of course, some moderns haven't learned that, and they've regressed to pre modern science and even Plato sometimes. But memorization is not being treated as a self-sovereign social animal. We look at that. That's what happens too much. Memorize, regurgitate, forget. You don't connect. People go into math class. We're doing math. Why are we talking about English? So on and so forth. There's this rejection and hatred of really reasoning and thinking and connecting and being a human. So there's, if you look at what's the same in different classes year by year in most schools and classes and teachers, because of bad philosophy. It's not like all of us are deliberately doing this, you know. It's like we don't know what we don't know. I sure the hell didn't get where I was, like, out of nowhere. I didn't pop out of Zeus's head like Athena did, you know, being like the god of war and wisdom, like she was the goddess of war and wisdom. Takes time, takes failures, takes learning from other people, takes a lot of work, honesty, commitment to truth, a commitment to get rid of things that are false so you're committed to the truth. A lot of work. It takes coming across the right ideas, finding the right answers by some geniuses. But, you know, so we got to look at it more like that. It's a systemic thing. No one ever figures out language and human reasoning and induction and physics and philosophy of language and all this stuff all on their own, out of nowhere, in their own little lives. No one ever. Very few people figure out what really logic is or how induction works. It's deep, hard, complex, sophisticated stuff. So we need to judge and assess people accordingly, please. But, you know, sometimes some of this bad stuff is intended on the part of some people. Most of the time it's unintended. There are unintended consequences. But look at, what do you do a lot? How, you know, as a student, as a teacher, as a person, what happens day after day in a class? What happens in different classrooms? What happens year by year? What's constant? What are the underlying basics, fundamentals there that helps you see what the philosophy of education is? So in a lot of it, the idea is that you are and I am just something to memorize stuff. We do not connect. Independent thought is irrelevant. It's not to be trained, not to be dealt with, not to be respected, not to be developed. We don't learn to think independently about different subjects, about history, math, physics, literature, language. We don't learn from geometry how to judge people better, or how to do law better, or politics, or think. Abraham Lincoln learned that from geometry. We don't look at history and learn about what people can do and how to judge people better and really take it seriously and make those connections. We don't connect history to math and history to physics as we should. So it shows how things are compartmentalized. We're not regarded as a self-sovereign social animal that needs a total awareness on the world. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is total awareness. It is not some compartmentalized thing where everything's like in isolation. Oh, here's a tree. Oh, here's an elephant. Oh, here's a creek. Oh, here's some rain. Oh, here's some hail. Oh, here's some wind. Oh, here's some clouds. No. That's looking at things in isolation, in a compartmentalized way. We need to connect. How does one thing we do affect the lawn, affect the creek, affect the ecology, come back to affect us, and so on and so forth? Integrate, integrate, integrate. Connect, connect, connect. How does something we do to someone else represent a principle that would make a bad society we don't want to live in? How does something we do to someone else affect them in a good way and help establish good principles in our society? How does something we're doing when we drive relate back to individual rights and self-sovereignty? How many people think about that when they're driving? Oh, look at those people over there driving. How do I respect their individual rights? How do I respect them as people? What can I do to communicate better with them? So, in education, people memorize some stuff in biology and ecology, but we don't learn enough about how we're connected to the real world. As an adult, we should know how we're connected to society, how we're connected to the inanimate world, the biological, ecological world, because we're part of that. We want to be a self-sovereign social animal, a rational animal. That means self-governing, able to think, knowing how this stuff works, just like we should know some basics and essentials of how the physical world works, how ecology works, because that's essential. There's so much loss of knowledge about biology and ecology. People study some physics, so let's do STEM. Failure. We need history. We need liberal arts, the arts of being a free person in a free society. That means knowing how to reason. And it means being in the world. Well, liberal arts is morally for freedom, but we need to put that in context of the real world too. Connect, get liberal arts, and then we need to know, as I say, how to relate to the world, which not enough people do. They go to gyms, they're in houses all the time, they're scared of the world. It's pretty sad. They don't get outside enough. There's too few people out in parks, camping and all that. Being one with biology and ecology. Be one with society is like, like some kind of like weird inbreeding nonsense. People are like lost in their own world, in a mirror world, detached from reality. We should not do that. We should be connected socially, but connected to the world because we depend on it. We are animals who need to think and feel and move in the world. And again, we don't know enough about physical education. But we should think about to see how our education is and what we can do to improve it as a student or a parent or a teacher or a principal or administrator. We should think, what is involved in life? What do we need training in to be a good adult human? Those should help direct how education should be. To hell with whether it's like convention or whatever. Children in the future, students are worth hell ton more than damn conventions. Hopefully you agree. Those who don't, my condolences. Some out there get it and are already doing it. Thank you. Others want to learn. Please do so. Read. Contact me. I'll help. I'd be glad to. But think about what comes up a lot. What are commonalities? What's in common? What's the one thing you find a lot in education? Do you just memorize a lot? Do you really understand? And I mean by understanding, not doing well on a test and like getting a social reward. Understanding is knowing about the world. For one thing, for what we learn, if it's knowledge, knowledge is an awareness of reality. If we don't know a what, if we can't give an example of something, we don't know what we're talking about. That's just basic knowledge. We got to have an example of something to know what we're talking about. Pop off some concept, see if you can give an example. Or for understanding, it's not just doing well on a test, not understanding logically, really, in a way that matters, a way that'll matter at work and in life, where we don't have someone giving us 100, patting us on the head, giving us a test. What matters is reality, where understanding is knowing the essence of something. Like, what is it to be a human, or a dog, or a cat, or a horse, or food, or health, or running, or physics, or education, or government? What's the essence of something? What's the nature of the thing? How do we get that concept from or generalization or idea from the evidence of the senses? So we think that we know that the earth goes around the sun. Prove it. Where does that come from the evidence of the senses? Start basic level and work your way up. Or so induce it, get it inductively, get it from the foundation, observing, forming generalizations, forming concepts, putting things together to build your way up to that generalization that summarizes just a comprehensive depth and breadth of observation and reasoning and thought. Or reduction, start and see if you can trace your way down to the evidence of the senses. Then you got some understanding of the idea. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking about. So know the essence of something. Be able to trace it back to the evidence of the senses, step by step, logically. Like you're given some idea in geometry, like y equals x squared for a parabola, as we put it in modern terminology with algebra. If you're given that for a parabola in geometry, can you trace that back down to basic ideas about triangles and parallel lines and things like that, and circles? Okay, so and then for understanding 3, we have understanding when something's related to other things that are causally relevant. Causally, C-A-U-S-A-L-L-Y, having to do with the cause. That's when we understand. So, do you know what the nature of something is? What its essence is? What is it to be that thing? Give a good definition. Can you relate it step by step back to the evidence of the senses? Do you even know how to do that? Is it related to other things we know? Just like the earth goes around the sun. How does that relate to staying on the earth? How does it relate to day? How does it relate to the seasons? How does that relate to force? How does it relate to going in a circle? How does that relate to temperature on earth through the year? How does it relate to your birthday? How does it relate to where the sun is in the sky? How does it relate to winds? How does it relate to staying on the earth versus flying off? How does it relate to a ship moving, to a merry-go-round turning, so on and so forth? How does it relate to science and theory and Ptolemy and induction and deduction philosophy? Although induction, deduction philosophy, then you're getting more abstract. But that's what understanding is. So are we really memorizing, just merely memorizing in school, or do we really understand and know what we're doing? Learn some stuff in chemistry. Okay, there's an atom. Prove that there are atoms. How do we know step by step from the evidence to the senses that there are atoms? Give me an example, not just a name that we have memorized, but give me an example. Show me what's evidence for atoms, and how does it relate to other things? Like, why do we need the atomic theory? What does it help us explain? What does the heliocentric theory help us explain? Things like that. It should be connected to other things that are causally relevant. And some of that is just knowing what the heck we're talking about. Understanding, if we understand something, we got some of the causes in place, and we know why the earth must go around the sun, or why there must be atoms. What does it have to do with chemical reactions, heat, temperature, gases, gas laws, electricity, magnetism, things like that. You know, but are we just memorizing, or do we understand? We as humans should understand. A good philosophy would help us do that, so we can deal independently with the world, work with other people, reason with them, understand what we're doing, because we have to. Wisdom is important. We need to do things morally, ethically, economically, socially, politically, and so on. We need a lot of reasoning. We need to understand conceptually the world, so we're not lost and afraid. We're not going around unsure and always fearing that some unknown thing will happen. We need to have certainty about things, in physics and chemistry. But, we should think, what's a commonality in our education? Memorization, obedience, moral training, and is it proper moral training, respecting us and helping us, but letting people make good decisions on their own and not being irrational in attacking others? Is it brainwashing? Is it indoctrination? It needs to be proper moral training. You're doing moral training is in communist Russia or communist China or Nazi Germany or Sparta, or you're kind of told and socially pressured into doing things, or are you learning you can do what you want as long as you can't violate anybody else's rights and you learn to make good decisions? It was like Martin Luther King Jr. would like. Do you learn strength? Is that the focus of education? Is in Sparta, fighting, maybe to some extent, obedience and strength like in Nazi Germany? Are you learning skills to survive? So what in education is going to help you live as an adult and be good in this world socially and biologically? What skills do we learn to survive and thrive biologically, physically? What skills of physical education? Do you know good technique for running, for lifting? Don't we have to lift a lot of stuff and pick stuff off the floor all through life? Are we ever prepared for that? We got to breathe a lot. Do people really know how to breathe properly? That's a basic function. Do we know total human movement and how running relates to crawling, relates to climbing a ladder, relates to getting out of a fire, relates to getting over a barrier, relates to getting in and out of a car, relates to throwing, climbing, groundwork, and so on? Do we know how all that relates and how brain function relates to that and being healthy? How good posture relates to breathing? Do we have the skills of independent thought to survive? Can we think and know if we're doing something that's true? Can we self-assess our conclusions? Do we know logic? Do you know induction? How to do an induction properly? Rules of concept formation, rules of classification, rules of explanation. We got to explain things. We talk to other people. How do we know when we're right or when we're wrong? Is social compliance there a lot? Are we pressured into doing things? Is there independent thought? Are we respected in the mistakes we make and the conclusions we draw? If you say something in class, does the teacher just say, "Oh, that's right, okay"? Or do we have to explain our answer fully and comprehensively so the teacher can help us see that, oh, you're learning how to think. You know this independently on your own and you can connect it to reality. You're not memorizing something. It's just not memorizing social behavior, and the meaning of something is just how people do things and think and feel and what someone's social reaction is. Do we understand what it means in the world? So what's going on? Is there independent thought or not? Day by day, class by class, year by year. Do you take things in isolation? This math problem, chemistry versus physics versus math versus history versus English. Or do we connect things into a unified awareness of reality? Do we know how discoveries and principles in chemistry help prove the atomic theory? Do we know how things in physics and thermodynamics help prove the atomic theory? In electrodynamics, do we know how that relates to a cell phone, to a tree, to our biological function, and so on and so forth? As Lincoln did, do we know how proof in Euclid's Elements helps us be a better thinker, which can help us explain things to other people better, do better in politics and law, and debate? Or do we not? Do we know how math helps us grasp things beyond our immediate awareness of perception, just as concepts do? With math, we can show that things in the heavens and things on earth follow some of the same laws. We can show that the moon can be classified as like an apple. They're the same. They're both falling. They're falling at a rate in proportion to the inverse square of the distance between them. So the moon's further than an apple from the center of the earth, and so it feels less force. And it varies with the square. Like if this is 60 times as far from this, it'll have 1/3060th of the force. 60 squared, 6 squared is 36. Add 2 zeros, 3,600. Put that under a 1. 1 over 3,600. That's how much less the force will be. We can figure that and grasp it and prove it with math, or finances, or economics, or house costs, and things like that. We can grasp these things we otherwise couldn't. Salaries. Are we told things as if it's a need-to-know basis? Or are we given reasons for it and we help develop wisdom? Do we learn to be wise and have a unified, connected, comprehensive grasp of the world so we can make good decisions and know how things interact and relate? When someone does something, what does that mean? How should we judge people well? Do we do like one math problem at a time? Things are unrelated. We don't have good explanations. It's like a need-to-know basis. Or again, are we told how this fits into the world, into human life? Very different philosophies of education there. Very different views on what a human is and what a person is and what an adult needs to know. Is it a need-to-know basis where you're like a cog in the machine and you don't matter and your independent thought doesn't matter and people aren't going to help you develop it? And again, it's systemic. It's not like every teacher is out there trying to do that on purpose. I didn't know better either. I made mistakes through the years, obviously, as everybody who does. But, and people who say they don't are dishonest. Everybody makes mistakes, and if they say they don't, then stay away from that person. Dishonest or deluded or something. Are we trained to have a mind to separate ourselves from other people, to be like us versus everybody else? Or trained to have a mind that just gets along, that can get along socially? Is it obedience, social conformity, being some kind of like thing where everyone's against each other? Or can we get along as rational people, as self-sovereign social animals, which we naturally are? We have tribes and all that. Obviously, it's in history. Look around. People want to belong. We're all like, don't tell me what to do on the one hand, and we're like, hey, wait for me on the other, and like, don't want to be embarrassed and stuff. Self-sovereign social animals. The evidence is clear. We think, we feel, we move. We have mental and physical aspects. unified into one. Is understanding relevant or not? Is it important, understanding things? Are we really being taught to be aware and being connected socially, or are we being programmed to do that? Do people learn explicitly how to get along well, how to see who's psychopathic and to stay away from in like control and jail or whatever, versus who's in error, versus who's doing well for the most part? Do we know? Is it deliberate? Do we ever learn how to make that deliberate? Like Daniel Dennett said, we should learn more to, as I said before, say something so well to someone you're talking to that they say, gee, I wish I would have put it like that. Know them. So even if we don't talk about someone, we should know when we're studying different things in history, different in works of literature, what is a person saying? Instead of just knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I hate that person in that novel. Why? Tell me about them and what they believe first. What are some ways in which you agree with them? What have you learned from them? Then criticize. There should be essays written about that. How difficult would that be? That could be a structure of essays of different lengths and complexities that we do through school. And it would vary with the work of literature. And then we're learning something. I mean, that's something we should do. I'm looking at some questions here. I made some notes. Make sure I don't forget some stuff. Remember, are we learning to connect socially, but ignoring the living world out there in the inanimate world? What do people really know about creeks and the function of creeks and rivers? What happens when we mess with them? How do creeks relate to water tables, tree life, animal life? Has there ever been a world that there's only humans and nothing but, and things do whatever we want? No. We need a world where there's inanimate and animate things. We need a good ecology. What is that ecology like? How do we relate to that? How do we move physically? What's a good physical education? What's really good biomechanics? Everyone thinks they can run and they go out and do stuff, but I've studied running. I know it. I know the biomechanics. I could learn more, of course. I know some. There's always more to learn, but a lot of people do it wrong. It's unfortunate. It's sad. I used to do it wrong too. How many decades did I not know what I was doing and try different things and not know how to run well? Run, crawl, lift, walk, breathe, things like that. Those are things we should know so we can be healthy, help other people, help ourselves, interact with the physical world. We should know the physical world, how to interact with it, know the living world. Again, people memorize stuff in biology, but it's never real. You memorize it, you regurgitate. How often do people go out in the woods and really learn it and track? Even park experts and stuff can't even recognize a dog track. They think it's mountain lion. I even know someone who's an expert in tracking, certified in cyber tracker, one of the leading people in the world who certified people in tracking, identifying animals in their gaits, male to female, and all this stuff. She's level 3 certified, top of the level, all that. If I remember right, it's was it over 90% of the things she was sent asking if it was mountain lion was really domestic dog. These are by park rangers and park people and stuff. The people who know tracking are people who know tracking only. But everybody should know how to recognize some animals around the world. It's the things we live in and live with. How the hell can we not know and recognize and appreciate the things we live with? Be connected to things biologically. We don't learn how to be human, what a living thing really is, without seeing living things and connecting with them and abstracting from that. Where like dogs and cats nowadays have more health problems because people don't know how to treat them as a dog or cat. There's all these diseases they have nowadays that they used to not have. Do we connect to our world and ecology? Is that really part of our education or not? And we need to think about some of this stuff. Time is limited and finite in education. So what do we really want to spend our time on? What are the few things that are really important in education? And we got to think what's automatic, what's volitional, what can we really develop up here? And it's thinking that pervades everything we do. Most everything, our heartbeat, we can control it to some extent. There's a lot of things that are automatic. Our growth, depending on what we eat, but there's all this feedback. We don't just grow automatically regardless out of context. It depends on sleep, exercise, good diet, getting the nutrients that we need, not just that we think we need. What do we actually need as a human? But thinking is critical for everything we do. So logic, epistemology, philosophy should be a basic part of education. Without learning that, there's a major failure. And again, it's a systemic thing. I used to not know better either. A lot of people don't. But it's a systemic thing, stuff that's been lost. And then there's like goofy people with bad ideas, wanting to have social stature, forcing everyone to do what they want, and like trying to humiliate people, and they want to get prestige, and so they try to get people to do it and all this stuff so people can think they're so cool. But we got to be careful with that and not follow it just because of stuff like that. What is right? What is a human? We need to stick to that if we're going to be good to our children and the students, if we really care and love them. So we got to think, what constant lessons are in all the subjects through the years, and what should we do? What should pervade everything? And the subjects, we should have mainly literature and language, because that's how we learn concepts. Literature is the art that expresses itself conceptually. So then we got some art in there. And then, if there's time, painting, theater, music, stuff like that. But some arts is important. Literature would be the main one, because it's conceptual, and it is tied in with history. It helps us learn history as we're doing it, because we get all these things through all the years, through all the millennia and centuries. Math, because it is critical to how reasoning works. It helps us make connections. It's everywhere. Economics, finance, physics, chemistry, health, nutrition, biomechanics, just all the stuff across the board. Ecology, biology. It's critical. Measuring, seeing how an increase of one thing affects something else. Does the other thing increase? When this increases, does this decrease? Things like that. That's just common in human thought. What's going to happen to my salary? What are the gas prices doing? How much are they? If I spend more here, how does that affect other things? It's in our thought. Some people might. It's funny that some people think they don't like math, but they use it all the time. It's important understanding modern world too. Science, that should be essentially physics and biology. Chemistry, part of physics. Biology, including natural history, ecology, evolution. Way not enough biology nowadays. There's too much like physics. Physics is important, yes. How does the material world work? Cars, cell phones, electricity, power outlets, TVs, lights, water, rain, runoff, chemistry, chemicals in the environment, all this stuff. But we're living. Not enough people know what it is to be a good human animal anymore. A lot of fads about exercise and diet, and people don't know how to breathe right and stuff like that. We need to be connected to biology and become more one with nature and ecology again, as our whole self-sovereign, rational animal, social animal requires. We should study history, what have humans done? It's like a laboratory. It's like physics for or experiments for human behavior. What have humans done? What's the good and the bad? What should we avoid? What should we do? What can we learn? How have we progressed to here? Why do people do that? Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they know better back then? You know, very important. What is it to be a human? What did our ancestors do? What kind of successes and failures brought us to where we are here today? Physical education, very important to talk about. When we integrate, that's what Galileo, Newton, William Harvey, Darwin did, Integration, connection, having wisdom, not just taking things in isolation, is critical to really getting the world. That's what Newton did. He got celestial mechanics, terrestrial mechanics, things in the heavens, the stars, the planets, things on the earth, sticks, rocks, waterfalls, showed that he engaged in this grand synthesis, showed that they follow the same laws. They're not separate and distinct realms as people thought before. And Galileo and Newton helped bring math into physics and see how it helps for identifying the nature of things and their cause-effect relationships. William Harvey helped connect biology and mathematics and use math more to see how circulation works, how biology works. What do we know about things nowadays? It came from physics because we unified biology with math and chemistry and physics to learn. Then we're able to see that, electrical activity is important for a lot of cellular and neurological functions. And Darwin, the great grand synthesis. He did not take things in isolation, like evolution or not. Darwin integrated botany, zoology, nature, geology, history, hydrology, all these things into one comprehensive view called evolution. So, like evolution or not, that is one thing everyone should learn from what Darwin did. This total, unified, comprehensive view of things. Very important. So, there is some good food for thought about philosophy of education in the view of what a human is and how that affects what we're doing, what education should be about, and how the product should be about, as opposed to the unfortunate mistakes that are going on nowadays without intention on the part of most people, unintended consequences. Some people, as we know, are jerks and evil. Look through history. They do bad things, psychopaths and all that. Most people, they're not deliberately keeping someone from being a good thinker, really developing their optimal mental and physical prowess so they can make the most of their lives and help their friends and family and society. It's just unintended consequence. People do things like this. I used to do some of that too. You memorize and all this. You don't know better. How do you get people to really think? What is thinking? What is logic? What is induction? It's not an easy thing to think about. Few people figure it out correctly. Few people think about it. Even fewer get it correct. Thankfully, I've studied other people, so I've learned a lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't have figured it out. But think about what's going on in your education. Try to make things better for yourself as much as you can. If you're a student, you're limited. You can only do so much. A parent, there's only so much time you got. You got your kids, you got work, you got this, and you got that. Hopefully you can look into a little bit. But teachers and principals, they need to take more responsibility, please. Try to improve things because you care about the students. I know we're teaching because our heart's in the right place. We don't always know good methods or good principles, but we want to help. Here's some stuff that'll help. I'd be glad to help. Come in, coach teachers, coach a school, consult. I know maybe someone who could help too. He could help instead. I could give some resources, stuff to read and all that. But philosophy of education, our view of what a human is critical in doing it well. Producing good, making children turn into good adult humans that can live a good life, be happy, be competent, be confident, have mental and physical prowess to help themselves, friends and family, and society. Peace.